Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. I really appreciate all the support that I've gained thus far and the feedback and learning opportunities that I received over time has been super valuable to me. So I really appreciate it. And also, short little update. I am now the host of the New Jersey Digest Third State podcast. So you can feel free to check me out on there too. I don't know how that happened. I guess opportunities just come to you as much as you try to go to them. So yeah, little shout out on that side of the branch. My parents always told me to get into media, so I'm really thankful that it seems to just be graciously falling into my life's journey. So this year I've decided to come up with a nice little series. The first episode I ever created was about the image restoration theory, and I went over each major step: corrective action, mortification, evasion of responsibility, denial, and the like. But one of the things that I wanted to dive into was the tactics between each strategy. In that first episode, I had mentioned that within the process of doing evasion of responsibility, for example, there's the tactic of defeasibility. But there's actually other tactics within evasion of responsibility that I really wanted to dive into and discuss, so that we understand that corrective action isn't just one thing, but it's many things. Mortification isn't just one process, but it's many processes to choose from, and same with evasion of responsibility. Evasion of responsibility has about 4 different tactics within it that I'd like to explore today. Good intentions is one, defeasibility is another one, which I brought up previously, accidental is another, and the one that we're really going to go into today is provocation. But in the following episodes, you'll see me dive into good intentions, accidental, and defeasibility tactics, all under the umbrella of evasion of responsibility strategy. So to briefly describe, we're going to see how crisis communication uses provocation in order to mitigate responsibility, figuring out when shifting the blame to someone else in PR actually serves as a winning strategy versus when it's a little out of bounds. And all of this is going to be through the lens of Naomi Osaka's case as a primary example during her conflict with the FFT, French Tennis Federation. So what happened? In May 26th, 2021, Naomi actually announced that she would not participate in any press conferences at the French Open. And after backlash from the FFT, French Tennis Federation, and threats of expulsion for not showing up to press conferences, she withdrew from the Roland Garros. Please excuse my pronunciation. So you might think, and honestly, I was definitely thinking, what is such a big deal about not showing up to a press conference? And why did not showing up to a press conference lead to threats of expulsion and backlash? Well, you might already know, but I definitely did not know that athletes had to show up to these press conferences or else they would be fined. No clue. And they could be fined up to $20,000 for not showing up to a press conference. Actually, the FFT president called her actions detrimental to the whole sport, tennis, and even to herself. He described it as a phenomenal mistake and a real problem. The media's reaction was pretty mixed. Some praised her stance, while others actually questioned her commitment as an influential athlete. The irony of it all is that in her effort to avoid the press, she actually generated more media attention than a standard press conference. So with the clear issue in play, a crisis communication strategy is definitely needed. And as I looked for examples to use the evasion of responsibility tactic of provocation, this case came to mind. So the goal of evasion of responsibility in general is to admit that you did an offensive act, but the party provides some type of justification in order to shift the responsibility for committing the act. So to define provocation specifically, it's claiming that the action was a reaction to external pressures or mistreatment. Then how does Naomi Osaka's case fit into this? Osaka's decision to skip the press conference wasn't just a backhanded move, it was actually a forehanded statement about athlete mental health. She positioned her refusal as a response to press treatment of athletes, particularly regarding mental health. The French Tennis Federation tried to rally the press against her, but Osaka was ready to take control of the match. She shifted focus from her individual decision to a broader issue of the media responsibility. Then I hope you can see that directly applied to the definition of provocation, Naomi Osaka is claiming that she decided not to attend the press conference as a reaction to the external pressure and mistreatment from the press against athletes. It seems easier said than done, but actually there are signs of inappropriate use of provocation, and there's potential risk that could further damage your reputation. When deciding whether or not to use provocation, you want to make sure that you're not blaming an unrelated party. So if Naomi decided to blame the tournament structure itself rather than the press treatment, it would have been unhelpful. There's also the problem of overstating provocation in order to justify extreme actions. In other words, person A did something small while person B reacted with something huge. Then the potential risk of using the provocation strategy is that claiming that you were provoked might be perceived as avoiding responsibility, which would damage credibility and trust. And therefore, it's important that there's a clear set of external factors to justify the response. This means that when you claim that you're provoked, in Naomi's case, she had a plethora of records showing how the press can cross the line in the athletic industry. She referenced when Venus Williams was 14 years old doing a press interview and the media questioning got a little aggressive, causing her father to defend her. And then she also referenced Marshawn Lynch in 2015 NFL press conference when he said, "I'm here so that I won't get fined." Then upon Osaka's personal media mistreatment, her agent called a reporter's behavior appalling and a form of intimidation. So upon these situations and these feelings that Naomi Osaka was going through, she made a social media post stating that she would not attend the press conference because she would not subject herself to people who doubt her. Like I said, the audience perception was a little mixed, and a really important point in a successful provocation strategy is that the public views the action as justified. Well, she could definitely gain support from the athletes and those that resonate with what she has to face in the industry professionally. In fact, many famous athletes and well-known figures praised her for speaking up. Venus Williams responded, "Girl, do you? Your life is yours to live." And Nicki Minaj and Janelle Monáe also publicly voiced support. Then also, despite the action, one cannot be provoked to react beyond the means of the core missions and values that were publicly defined. So if the mission or value promotes peace, for example, provocation cannot be used in the event that they reacted violently. Provocation could only be used if an action was taken within the means of mission and value. Then was Naomi Osaka's absence from the press conference standing up for herself outside of her mission and value as a personal brand? Actually, it wasn't. There's been many cases in which she uses her platform for activism, such as her 2020 U.S. Open protest, wearing masks with the names of Black victims of police violence. So, again, using her platform for activism for mental health and protesting for a more considerate means of press and media confrontation, we can see that this is not far out from what Naomi Osaka stands for. So, with all of this, can we see that the outcome was a successful crisis communication move or not? And what are the signs of an effective provocation strategy? Well, the first sign is that there's audience empathy and understanding, and many resonated with her mental health concerns. Another sign is being able to shift the focus from an individual to a systemic issue, and therefore, despite her absence, she reframed it as a conversation about athlete well-being. Third, being able to maintain credibility and brand alignment within the strategy is a big sign of an effective provocation strategy. Naomi's effort to advocate for athlete rights fit right within her public image, and as usual, the biggest sign of an effective strategy is always being able to restore trust and minimize backlash. And although some criticized her, the majority were able to support her stance. Then let's take a step behind the scenes. Who's involved in a crisis response? And what would a team look like that would organize all of this? I'd like to emphasize 3 key players. 1, the PR team, essential for messaging and media strategy. 2, the legal team, ensuring compliance and reducing any liability. And 3, of course, the crisis communication specialist that would coordinate responses and reputation management. It's also important to consider what channels were used during this strategic announcement. In terms of press releases, Naomi used social media as a quick and direct communication with her fans when she made the announcement. But here and there, she did a few interviews and speeches to humanize her stance and also build connection and resonance with the audience. So what are my final thoughts? When used strategically, I really believe provocation can be an effective evasion of responsibility tactic. However, it really must align with the audience perception, external evidence, and brand values in order to succeed. Osaka's case is a strong example of how shifting focus to a systemic issue can reduce backlash and strengthen credibility. I really appreciate seeing that rather than letting the press call the shots, Osaka made her own, proving that sometimes the best strategy is to change the game altogether. She didn't just play defense, but she turned the conversation into a new kind of match point for mental health in sports. And last but not least, the key is to keep your eye on the ball and ensure that public sees the provocation as justified and not just a way to dodge accountability. I hope you enjoyed this exploration into the tactic of provocation, and I hope we can continue to learn together. Thank you for tuning into The Communication Artist, aka The Calm Artist. Bye.